Welcome to the Wellness Pulse with Monica Stevens. From CPR to self care, staying in rhythm with your well being. Thanks for tuning in. Right. Good evening. Today I've got my buddy James Bobby Fields here from Emergency and Safety Trainers. Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. Just trying to, I guess, decompress and settle back into non-island life, non-cruise life, if you will.
Me too.
Right. So we've just returned from the 2025 Lifesaving Summit cruise style, where we traveled to the Bahamas, the beautiful Princess K and Nassau, Bahamas. So, Bobby, what do you think about that?
It was definitely a different experience.
Different in an awesome way or like an amazing way?
Uh, Family wise, a little bit on the complicated side, trying to keep everybody at bay, trying to just navigate everything, in between our breakout sessions and things like that. Trying to um, you know, have an equilibrium between family time and work. So
I remember saying and feeling like there's so many things to be excited about. I don't really know what to be excited about when.
yeah, it was kind of overwhelming. Everything in general. So
I can agree, but not so overwhelming that I wouldn't do it again. Would you do it again?
maybe if it was just my wife and I.
Fair, fair point. All right, so take the complicated part aside. Let's just thinking about the life-saving summit in the sessions and the networking and all of that good stuff. What do you think about how that went down on the cruise?
Same as ever. Um, once we all get together, it truly is, again, for the most part, a family reunion, bringing in new family members. Um, and I love just sharing, the knowledge that I have, with the new people, the first comers. Um, I love catching up and just, refamiliarizing with, even, with each other, finding out about, how their business has been, learning some things that I can bring into to my business, or, you know, you guys learning about things that I've done that maybe you're going to incorporate in. So, I mean, it's always nice that once a year to get a new perspective on things.
Definitely. I always get excited for CPR Christmas, as I like to call it, but I personally think we should do it every 7 years. So my next question is, how long have you been attending the Life Saving Summits?
So this is my fifth one out of seven. I wasn't able to attend the first one. I didn't know about it. I didn't know about any of this until I met Brady online. Um, back in, I got my instructor certificate back in 1996, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I originally got that just because I was on the fire department and it was to help out, to train, our members. Um, and then I started working for our local ambulance district in 1999. Um, and I started going to paramedic school. And again, I was doing some in-house training for the ambulance district, but it was never my, full. It wasn't even a side hustle. I was doing it as part of the ambulance district. Um, and then they really weren't doing a lot of community outreach, or certifying or doing classes for any of the healthcare facilities or anything like that. And being in paramedic school, I was already working full time, going to school full time. Um, but my full time job still didn't pay a whole lot. And it kind of started with one of the local assisted living facilities called the ambulance district looking for somebody to research their staff. Um, and our business manager or office manager, she was like, well, we really don't have people that do that. She goes, but we have a couple of instructors that may be interested in doing it, you know, on their own. And I was really fortunate that, I said, yeah, I'll do it. I said, but I don't have any equipment. And uh, one of our assistants, guest assistant chief, you'd want to call him, he's like, just take our equipment and just throw some money in the pot to replace the supplies that you use and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got started a little bit, doing a couple classes here, a couple classes there. Um, but it was never really designed as even a side hustle. It was just kind of helping out and putting a little bit of money in my pocket. Um, and then I left there and I went to work in St. Louis for an ambulance service. And I started teaching at their EMT school and stuff part time. Uh, I was doing CPR classes for them, still not for myself. Um, then, as things progressed, my chief on fire department, his boss asked if he knew anybody, and it's like, well, he goes, I know some instructors. Let me reach out to them, and um, here I am, don't have any equipment because I was, just doing it in house. Um, and fortunately, through relationships I had made at some of the EMS conferences with some equipment distributors and stuff like that. Um, I was able to obtain some demo equipment um, to demo to use for the class. Um, and then I liked the equipment. I got paid for the class. I bought the equipment. Um, so I just kind of started building up shortly after that. Um, Still doing it as a side hustle until 2008. Um, and due to some work related injuries and other things that was acquired during work, I just couldn't work on an ambulance anymore. So I had to take a medical discharge. Um, and my retirement still didn't cover the bills. So it's like, what are we going to do? Um, to help offset the shortage. And I was like, well, I if I can't do it, I'll teach it. Um, so we just kind of expanded from there, still not really knowing where we were going to, how we were going to do this. It was very unorganized. Just trying to get money coming in, and a former medic that I used to work with. Um, he had started up a couple of other businesses, and he said, "Look," said, the local action agency is doing this, entrepreneurship class, trying to bring more business into the area, using some federal grant money and things like that." So he's like, "Call them and see if you can get into it." So it was a very condensed, like 8-week business class. Um, a lot of information in a very short amount of time. Learning how to create a business model, learning about, from startup to some accounting, some tax things. Um, and then at the end of the class, we all presented a business model, and they had a committee that done a blind look over. There were no names attached. It was just look at the business models, see if it was sustainable, see if it wasn't sustainable. And then we wound up getting, I think it was like $25,000 in grant money um, that we really used to enhance and to provide our services. So I was able to buy a couple of used life pack monitors, some more mannequins, some other pieces of equipment that we use for ACLS and PALS and stuff like that. Um, so that was when we really, really got started as trying to do this as an actual business. Um, and because of that, I still give back to that action agency. they service 9 counties with Head Start in each of those 9 counties. So um, I do their CPR certification at cost because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be where we are today. So I completely do those profit free for them. Um, but we've just been growing, expanding. I was aligned with a couple of different training centers throughout the years, and then COVID hit, and like I'd said in the Life Saving Summit when I was asked to speak, in 2018 we had a house fire and lost everything that we had. Um, Fortunately, my business equipment was in storage, um, so uh, it wasn't affected really. Um, but we were life was put at a standstill. Um, so I was still trying to do business as much as I possibly could. And then COVID hit, and the training center that I was aligned with, um, they were just strictly the run of the mill training center. They were just for AHA compliance only. They didn't care if my business was growing or whatever the case may be. It was just are you doing classes in compliance or not? And selling, giving me cards. Um, so we went when COVID really hit, they put a stop on training. You're not doing any classes until we say you can. So we literally went from like March until August without doing a single class. Um, we were fortunate enough that January and February were decent enough that it kind of held us over a little bit. Um, but we were still living with friends, trying to find a new home, and things like that. And when they did start to ease up restrictions and said, okay, you can start teaching classes again, um, I guess somewhere along the line, our training center coordinator was replaced by somebody else. We get an email, an introduction email. Hi, I'm so and so. I'm the new training center coordinator, and we're going to make some changes. That's not a good way to start off, an introduction. Um, so I'm like, okay, they were talking about the different changes in procedures and stuff like that, and I get it. But then it was just like, you know, they're not really helping me any. Um, and then I seen a Facebook post from Brady, and I'm like, you know what? Something told me to just go ahead and call and see what he has to say. Um, and I called him. We talked several times on the phone. Um, Due to life circumstances, we wound up actually meeting um, in Overland Park, Kansas. I was out there teaching a class. He was out there for family, but for family reasons. And we took a couple hours out there to meet up, and it's just been growing ever since. And I firmly believe um, that God puts people in our lives for specific reasons. When we need them the most. Um, and once we got everything established, he was like, "Hey, we do this thing called the Life Saving Summit. Um, if you can make it down here, we'd love to have you down." Um, and even then, it's not like we had a lot of money. Fortunately, I was able to pay for and there was no, scholarships at that time. But I was fortunate enough that I was able to pay the registration fee, and that first year that I went, it was done at the stables or wherever it was down there in Alabama, and I had enough uh, hotel points built up that I didn't have to pay for hotel at that point because there was no lodging. Everybody was on their own for that. So I was able to spend some time down there before the um, before the summit and even after that and come home, and applied to what I took from there, started applying that to my business, incorporating AED sales, and we're now where we are now. And every time I go down there, I wind up bringing something back that um, gives me a new perspective, and maybe I just need to tweak this a little bit or tweak that a little bit. Um, and I'm constantly going through and revisiting my business model because things change. Even our business name, when we started off, our business name was totally different. Um, and then we got to the point where we were not just, I wanted to better reflect what we were doing because the business name that we had really wasn't working. Um, so we were getting bigger, we were doing more classes. We decided that, hey, you know what? January 1st of this year, or this coming year, we're going to completely rebrand. We renamed, put in a whole new business logo, and went LLC instead of sole proprietor. Figure if we were going to do it, we were just going to do it all. Um, and I think having the better logo, the better business name, really has helped a lot. Along with those things that I've learned at the life saving summits.
I agree. I love how Go Rescue, how they actually care about us and, actually the growth of your business. Because you're right, a lot of training centers just care about the AHA compliance and so forth. So we've talked a bit about your history with Go Rescue and your experience and background. So that leads to you were denoted with a special award this year, Instructor of the Year for Go Rescue at the Life Saving Summit, correct?
That is correct.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So now what just remind everybody what actually happened for you to have earned that award.
So, not only, do we have emergency and safety trainers, but I also wear some other hats as well. So, I am training center faculty for Go Rescue as well for the actual training center. Plus, I also work kind of per diem as special support services. So, when you get a job, and at the bottom, when it talks about your job functions, that little disclaimer that says, any and all other, jobs, asked for by management, supervision, all of that stuff. That's kind of what I do. So, um, if it involves, uh, hey, can you do an instructor monitor for this? Or can you go help teach a class to do this? Or, hey, we've got an AED sale in this area. We need an AED installed. Can you do this? Uh, most of it is just on the instructor side of it. Um, Last year, due to circumstances, they were getting ready to do an instructor class in Birmingham, and the instructor that was scheduled to do it wound up having a medical emergency, wasn't able to, that was going to make it. And I had about 14 hours notice. Um, that said, hey, can you make your way down to Birmingham tomorrow morning and teach this class? So I was like, well, I guess I can. Um, I was actually just pulling up to my own private class that I was doing for some of the St. Louis Blues hockey players. And I was like, I'm not turning this opportunity down, but let me get done with this class. I called my wife, asked her what we were doing, what her plans were for the next day, and it was summertime, so she was off school. And she goes, "Well, I don't have anything planned." I'm like, "Pack our bags. As soon as I get done with this, I'm swinging by. We're switching out vehicles, and we're going to Birmingham." And she goes, "Why?" I said, "They need me to teach a class." So we went down there. We pulled up at the hotel at about, I think it was about 3:45 in the morning. Class is supposed to start at 8. Um, I got a couple hours sleep and walked up uh, walked up the street to go rescue. Left my wife with the car, but I just went and walked to the office um, and taught their instructor class for them. They've had a couple of last minute classes. You know, like last week, I was in Terre Haute, Indiana, teaching a class for them because they just didn't have an instructor to pull the class off. So I went out there. Um, they've uh, they've run into some situations with instructor renewal stuff that needed to be done um, out toward Washington D.C. and I hopped on a flight and went out there and took care of that for them. So I'm just kind of there to help them when when they're in a pinch. So
Okay, so I thought she told, so it seems like you've been doing a lot of just like you said, Johnny on the spot or Johnny on the fly, I should say. Um, I thought Miranda, there was a series of class, but I guess was that what she was describing? Just these different series where you get called last minute and somehow you're managed to be there and get there because those are like three different states that are not your residential state. So,
no, no, it was uh you know about a 3.5, 4 hour drive to Indiana to teach that class. It was a flight out to Maryland or Virginia to to do an entire weekend of instructor class, instructor renewal, and monitoring, and then hop the flight and come back home, um, or the drive to Alabama. So, um, I mean, there's several things.
well, that is awesome. Definitely well earned. So let me ask you, why is it that you're so willing to be, available to go rescue like this? Why is it that you do what you do?
Well, I look at it as they have helped me, so why not return the favor?
And as far as being passionate about CPR and safety and AED training, what gives you your inspiration to do that?
So, I mean, and I still hold a license as a medic, and I still teach, continuing ed classes for paramedics and EMTs and things like that. Um, but I started in the world of EMS when I was 13 years old, as a junior firefighter, first responder, um, and it's just kind of always been. It kind of started off as I had friends in junior high and stuff that their dads were firefighters, they were junior firefighters, and um, I looked at it then as an opportunity of just to give me something to do when in the summertime. Uh, there's a lot of kids that wind up getting in with the wrong groups of people and things like that. And I took this as an opportunity to do something with my community, to keep me busy and to keep me from getting in with the wrong groups. Um, and I quickly discovered that I had a passion for helping people. Um, even at 13, I went through first responder class. And I've been doing that, my entire life. Um, and unfortunately, life circumstances, um, in 1998, I trauma coded my dad. Um, it was an unfortunate, it was an unsuccessful resuscitation. There was just too many things that were going on internally to have a successful outcome. Um, But it was at that point that I thought about either completely giving up my career of EMS or, taking it to the next step and becoming a medic, thinking that, I want to have more skills that could have been done in that situation, to prevent somebody else from having the same outcome that I had. Um, so, I kind of looked at that. And, every patient that I took care of on an ambulance or whatever, I always provided the care with them as if that person was my own family. Um, I lost track of the number of people I've done CPR on. Somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2,000. Um, I've been part of successful clinical saves. I think probably in the neighborhood of like 170 or 180. In my career, my last year working in St. Louis, I had 16 clinical saves in a year. So, and I take that as because I teach the same skills that I use, and I make sure that when I'm done teaching the class, that these people are confident and they can provide those skills. Because if you do it right, I mean, it's evidence. 16 clinical saves in a year, 180 in my career. Um, that yes, I mean the numbers are there. Unfortunately, in our area, help isn't readily available. The last service I worked at, 35 minutes to get an ambulance sometimes. Um, so it's important. And we've seen with the chain of survival how things, if there's even a crack in it, that the outcome isn't going to be best. So we need to make sure that, we have people that are trained, because it could be your wife, it could be your child, it could be your mother, your father, it could be your brother, sister. So it's important that we all know how to do this.
Absolutely. And if someone is hesitant on taking a CPR or a first aid class that includes CPR, what advice would you give to them, be it a lay person?
So, we've been really, really focusing on, we don't have a brick and mortar location, so everything we do is all on site. Um, whether it be from the traditional certification type classes, at a place of employment or whatever. But we really do try to promote our CPR parties. Um, because we find that if we do things like that, because there is that potential intimidation for somebody to not want to take a class because maybe they're afraid, well, what if I mess up during the class and somebody's going to laugh at me or this, that, and the other? Um, why not get a group of friends together? Why not do this at your house or at a friend's house where it's a comfortable and a familiar atmosphere? You're around other people that you're comfortable and familiar with. you know, hey, you want to host this party? Um, here's what we'll do. You get a group of friends together. You host it, you provide the snacks, things like that. Your certification will be at no charge for you hosting it and providing the refreshments and stuff like that. We're going to come in, we're going to learn, we're going to have fun. We're going to and making it fun, we make it memorable for them, but we're also doing it in a non-threatening, non-intimidating method, um, that they can relate to, and they're going to take that knowledge and retain it a lot better than constantly being afraid that they're in that class. Or we may have those situations where, um, because of status, like I said, I was doing a private class in St. Louis for some of the St. Louis Blues, um, because of their status. Um, not wanting to be hounded by other people in the class, hey, can I get your autograph or can I do this? You know, for the most part, they are very private individuals. Um, so I was able, they reach out to me in an email from our website. Um, and you know, and I didn't treat them any different than I treated anybody else if I was doing a CPR party at their house. Um, because in the end, these people just want to be treated like normal people. Um, so that, you know, that helps take care of that barrier. especially when they had new grandbabies that were going to be on the way. They wanted to make sure that they were trained in case something happened, but they didn't want that, being out there in the public to do it.
Awesome. And that's an awesome solution. Well, I thank you so much for your time and all your experience. Thank you so much for what you do.
Well, thank you.
Thanks again for listening. If you or anyone you know needs to learn CPR, first aid, or a life saving skill, please contact People's Choice CPR and Safety. From CPR to self care, the Wellness Pulse is staying in rhythm with your well being. I'm Monica Stevens. Take care.